Hello everyone! Patch 7.1 has returned to Karazhan, this time not as a full-blown raid, but a 5-man dungeon. Before we dive into the story offered in Legion, let's first talk about the history of the tower and its connection to the Guardians and the Burning Legion. The reason why Karazhan exists in the first place goes back all the way to the Guardian Aequin, around 823 years before the Dark Portal opened up. The Avatar Sargeras had been summoned upon the world of Azeroth, and Aequin confronted it within the cold land of Northrend. She had been granted the formidable powers of the Guardian, charged with safeguarding the world against threats like the Burning Legion, and with the great staff Atiesh, she was able to defeat the Avatar of the Dark Lord of the Legion. However, this battle would forever change her. Unknown to all was that a portion of the spirit of Sargeras had transferred into her weakened body. There, a sliver of Sargeras' undying malevolence would remain lurking within the depths of her soul. Unaware of the dark presence hidden deep within her, Aequin gathered Sargeras' colossal broken form to seal it away where it could harm no one else. She considered many locations to serve as the Demon Lord's final resting place, but in the end, she chose the ancient Night Elven city of Suramar, some of which had been blasted to the bottom of the sea during the Sundering, and we now call this the Tomb of Sargeras. After the battle in Northrend, Sargeras began twisting Aequin's thoughts. He pushed her to isolate herself from the Council of Tirisfal, the very council that had given her these guardian powers to begin with, turning her against them. Over the next 100 years, Aequin's relationship with the council, it became more and more strained. Sargeras' subtle influence made her even more paranoid about her fellow magi. Her growing unease led to her constructing a refuge far from the eyes of the council. Within the barren and remote Deadwind Pass, she forged the Grand Tower known as Karazhan. Its whereabouts would remain a secret from the council for many years. Now, as you might imagine, the council wasn't too happy with Aequin's behavior and decided that if she wouldn't step down as a guardian and hand over her powers to a successor, then they would force her to do so. They formed the Tiris Guard, an order of magi girded with relics and ornaments that could diminish the guardian's incredible powers. After years of training, these resourceful and gifted hunters, they set out to find Aequin and bring her back to Dalaran. The Guardian eluded many of the Tiris Guard with ease. However, the hunters did succeed in finding Karazhan and reporting its location back to the council. With Karazhan no longer safe, Aequin magically sealed off the tower from any outsiders, and she then set off to locate a new refuge, one that neither the council nor the Tiris Guard would ever find. After much consideration, she decided to build this stronghold in the ruins of ancient Suramar, deep beneath the sea. Her dwelling, the Guardian Sanctum, would stay hidden from the Tiris Guard for centuries. Now, 45 years before the Dark Portal opened up, Aequin encountered a Tiris Guard by the name of Nilas Aran, one of the most unrelenting Tiris Guard ever. He hounded the Guardian for months, and their fierce encounters became like a game of wills and wits between them. During their duels, the opponents bantered back and forth, seeking insights into each other's strengths and weaknesses. To Aequin's surprise, she discovered that Nilas harbored misgivings about the Council of Tirisfal, and Nilas realized that Aequin was not the traitorous rebel that the Council of Tirisfal had made her out to be. He began to sympathize with her plight and sensed that Aequin was wrestling with some unseen darkness in her soul. But for all his brilliance, he would never know that this darkness was actually the lingering presence of Sargeras. Hoping to help her overcome her struggle, Nilas laid down his arms and he abandoned his hunt. Before long, an unexpected love blossomed between the two former enemies. They agreed that they would work together to prevent the Council of Tirisfal from ever having control over another guardian. Knowing that she could not maintain her mantle of guardianship forever, Aequin proposed a solution. They will bear a child capable of inheriting her Tirisfallen powers. They will transfer her powers to the child, and only then could a new guardian arise free from the council's manipulations. Nilas agreed, seeing this plan as a redemptive act for Aequin. In time, she gave birth to a child named Medivh, or Keeper of Secrets in the High Elven tongue. She locked her powers away within the boy's spirit, where they would linger until Medivh reached maturity. There was, however, something much darker in Medivh. The lurking spirit of Sargeras stirred in the child's soul. Though Aequin did not know it, the Demon Lord had possessed the infant while he formed in her womb. A child with immense guardian powers, an immense responsibility on his shoulders, while also having a dark titan inside of you, that can only mean trouble, and it would. Nilas became a conjurer of Stormwind's royal court, where he would raise their son, and Egwin left Medivh in his father's care. Nilas' role as official court conjurer, it meant that the young Medivh was also part of the royal court. As the boy grew older, he spent much of his time in the company of two other notable children, namely Anduin Lothar, a descendant of the Arathi bloodline, and Lane Rin, the Prince of Stormwind. Medivh cherished his friendship with Anduin and Lane, for their activities together were often an escape from Nilas' intensive tutoring. Although Medivh excelled in the arcane arts, his father rarely gave him praise. He was a cold and mirthless mentor, constantly pushing his son to achieve more. Nilas eventually told his son about the Council of Tirisfal, the line of guardians, Medivh's own secret heritage, and that one day the boy would assume the role of guardian. The fate of the entire world would then rest squarely on his shoulders. The pressures of his destiny and his exhausting studies tormented Medivh's thoughts. The mounting anxiety led to a disastrous consequences when the boy finally came of age. On the eve of his 14th birthday, the stress that was building up within Medivh, it ignited his dormanted guardian powers. Fevered dreams assaulted the youth as the Tirisfallen energies howled to be unleashed. Nilas struggled desperately to help his son, but the incredible powers within Medivh lashed out, killing his father, and Medivh fell into a deep coma. For many years, he lay unconscious in Stormwind's Northshire Abbey, tended to by clerics and watched over by his faithful friends Anduin and Lane. When Medivh did finally wake up, he found that the world had changed. Lothar had become a knight in the Stormwind's military, and Lane was poised to succeed his father, Berefin, as the King of Stormwind. Not even Medivh himself knew of the dark titan inside of him, subtly twisting his every thought and action to a much darker end. The fallen titan had found the perfect instrument with which to begin the Legion's next invasion of Azeroth. A corrupted guardian, that which was actually supposed to keep Azeroth safe from the threat of the Legion, it was the perfect tool for the job. This is where the information from the Chronicles ends, since the Chronicles is designed to clean up the lore and they've already made a fair few changes to the already established story of Karazhan and Medivh and all that. It's hard to say what direction they're going to take. They could go with the Warcraft movie version, or with what we now know from The Last Guardian, or they could make up a completely new version. That's sadly impossible to predict, but what we do know right now is that Medivh would eventually find his way to the Tower of Karazhan and make it its home. Sargeras had to make contact with Gul'dan, open the Dark Portal, and led the Orcish horde into Azeroth to start their first invasion and weaken the world. The good side of Medivh was still trying to fight against Sargeras, place certain people in the right spots, and eventually Medivh's apprentice Khadgar, together with Garona half-Orcan, they discovered the Guardian's corruption and they got help. Together with Lothar and knights from Stormwind, they confronted Medivh. They stabbed and decapitated him, putting an end to the threat of the corrupted Guardian, after which they focused on the war against the Horde. Egwin had already discovered the big mistake she had made, and she had tried to confront her corrupted son, but she was unable to defeat him, and she barely escaped the confrontation. Saving up her powers, she used them to resurrect Medivh, the good side of Medivh of course, which we then saw as a prophet during Warcraft 3, gathering armies to fight against the coming Legion, and showing the world that it no longer needed guardians. With the defeat of Archimonde at Mount Hyjal, the tale ended with the legendary words,
"And now that my task is done, I will take my place amongst the legends of the past."
Medivh then left the story for a while in the Warcraft comics we read about Medan, Medivh and Garona's child, finding his way to Karazhan and learning more about his father's past and eventually taking on the mantle of Guardian. For years, fans asked and wondered what was going on with Medan, since he never showed up in the story after the comics. Time and time again, Blizzard held off a clear answer until the latest Q&A at BlizzCon 2016.
What happened to Medan? Great question. We've danced around this for a long time. How to put this? Certain fiction exists outside of the world of Warcraft that we love, but isn't necessarily what we would consider canon. So Medan is Guardian isn't considered canon in Warcraft lore, which is why for the last 5 years you haven't seen a reference to him. So that doesn't mean that there can't be a story for Medan. It's just not like it was laid out in the comics.
So Medan's story arc as the Guardian in the comics has finally been declared non-canon, so we can disregard his adventures within Karazhan and move on to the moment where we actually got to set foot into the tower for the first time within the Burning Crusade. Lore back then was a little bit messed up, and the details as to what was going on in the tower, they were not so clear. We were sent in, at the request of the Violet Eye, agents of the Kirintor who were keeping an eye on the tower. At some point, the tower sealed itself with some of the agents still stuck inside, and we go about obtaining a key and gaining entry. Inside, we found Kiana's log, an agent sent into the tower, and the log confirmed the suspicions of a demonic presence atop Karazhan. It is a very important place. It is a portal into the Nether, a beacon shining into other worlds. The possible repercussions of it falling into the wrong hands is simply unthinkable. The demonic intrusion had to be stopped, and since we were the only ones with a key, we got the job of cleaning up the tower. Inside, we found spirits like Niles Aran, we found undead like Moros, Ottoman the Huntsman, we found demons, dragons, ethereals, titan creations. It was pretty much a mixture of whatever, which made for a really cool raid, but as a story as a whole, that was all over the place. In essence, it was Karazhan, magical and mysterious, and at the end of the raid, we saw Prince Malchezaar. All realities were open to him. He even dropped the weapon Gorhal, which would later be granted to Garrosh in the lore, so he possibly obtained that from a whole different reality. But not even Malchezaar was powerful enough to stand in our way, and we brought him down. We saved the tower from the demonic incursion, and we saved the day. For many years, Karazhan has stood within Deathwind Pass, and now, with the expansion Legion, its doors finally reopen, which brings us to the current story. During the Legion's pre-events, we joined Khadgar as he went into the tower to search for answers, to find more about the pillars of creation. Even back then, we saw that Legion forces, led by Tarazul, they tried to claim the tower. So Garrosh knew that we were after the location of the pillars, but despite his forces doing their very best, we were able to turn the defense of the tower against them and claim the knowledge that we came for. Khadgar stayed behind a little longer to try and bolster Karazhan's defenses, while we delivered a book, but it seems like he didn't do a very good job since the Legion has still claimed the tower.
The Master has been gone for so very long. I anticipate his return in every gust. It's maddening. Whatever is one to do to pass the time. I've gone and made a mess. Now, where was I? Oh yes. Our unannounced visitors. Preparations must be made, for the Master will return to Karazhan soon.
The people of Azeroth don't have a fancy cinematic to let them know what's going on, to let them know what's going to happen in the next patch. Our first lead to the trouble at Karazhan, it comes from God King Skovald. Our scouts sent troubling reports that Skovald had received a new directive from Gul'dan, and in response, his forces have stepped up their attacks. They don't call him God King for nothing, since several quests before this moment has us already taken him out. But regardless, we must travel into the Halls of Valor once more, this time on Mythic difficulty, best him in combat, and find out what his Legion Masters have demanded. Clutched in Skovald's hand, we find a shattered remnant of a fell crystal still glowing with demonic power. It seems the God King didn't want it to be found, but if anyone can glean the meaning of the broken crystal, it will be Khadgar, so we bring it back to him in Dalaran. It seems like the Legion has gone through some extra trouble to conceal their plan from us, and we need an intact crystal, or at least enough fragments so we can reassemble them into one and determine the Legion's targets. We do just that by collecting the fragment of Spite from Blackrook Hold, the fragment of Power from the Violet Hold, and the fragment of Torment from the Vault of the Wardens. With all these fragments collected, Khadgar puts them back together and figures out what's going on.
Now, to combine the fragments you recovered. No! I was so distracted by our efforts on the Broken Isles that I neglected the defenses I put in place. The Legion has taken Karazhan! We must get it back!
In his haste to retrieve information on the Pillars of Creation, the defenses put in place to protect the tower were ramshackle at best, and the Legion was quick to find a weakness. Thanks to the time that Sargeras spent controlling Medivh, he knows the tower's secret as well as Khadgar does. Whatever the Dark Titan plan is, we must do everything in our power to stop it.
We need to travel to Karazhan at once and discover what the Legion is after. I'll conjure a portal. Archmage Karazhan, we could use your assistance.
Karazhan was actually part of the Dark Riders comic, in which he joined their group into the tower and faced off against the Dark Riders. Now he's a member of the Council of Six, and his experience with the tower will definitely be of value. He wants us to recover an essence of corrupted soil and an essence of corrupted water from the caverns beneath, which he can study to unravel the Legion's scheme. Khadgar, in the meantime, wants us to close some of the portals that are bringing in reinforcements, kill a few of the demons, and secure the eastern and western ley lines beneath Karazhan. Ley lines are lines of power, and the location where Karazhan stands is actually a point where these ley lines cross each other. They come together, allowing for a great pool of power. By securing the ley lines, we cut them off from that source of power and giving us a chance of retaking the tower. With all of that done, Khadgar wants us to reclaim the ramparts by placing wards at key locations to bolster our defenses and secure the area, while Karazhan is going to study the samples that we brought him, while he wants us to go and interrogate a captured demon. The worm tongue called Rezel, he tells us that he's our friend. He was only following his mistress' orders of gathering samples of magic. Her master, since in the Legion even masters have masters, but her master needs the tower for very big magic, and they're all in the dirt beneath the tower, so our next task is clear. With the samples we collected, Karazhan transforms us to look like one of the worm tongue, allowing us to infiltrate the ranks and find our targets.
This is irrelevant!
Here we get our first glimpse of Vizadum, the master of Tarzu and Luxara Darkscorn. He is our final target within the tower, but we can't confront him just yet. We do know that the Legion's presence is deeply rooted within the tower, and it's time to enter this magical place and confront whatever they have waiting for us inside. Though our primary objective is to liberate the tower from the Legion's hold, Khadgar has another request. Karazhan is a place where magic and history intertwine. Moments of the past have been known to take physical form, and these forms can possess great power. As we journey through Karazhan, we collect soul fragments, memories of the past, that could provide valuable insights into what's really going on inside the tower.
I think it wise to divide our efforts. I'll work to circumvent the tower's magical defenses. You may need to take a more blunt force approach. This goes without saying, but be on your guard. I sense something. A presence I've not felt since.
Our first stop is the opera, where ghostly residents of the tower, they're waiting for a show. We can't go further without finishing the play, and Barnes, the stage manager, he won't believe us when we tell him that we're not actually actors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's feature presentation.
Here we'll play out one of three acts. It's either Wicked, a parody of Wicked. Are villains born evil, or do they fall into wickedness due to the influence of others? Perhaps considering this quandary from the wholesome point of view will offer enlightenment. Then the second option, Beautiful Beast, a parody of Beauty and the Beast. Cursed to take on the form of a beastly monster. Brute must find true love before he loses his life to the dark magic that transformed him. Will he learn proper table manners in time to win the heart of the fair Bella? Or the one that we actually had, Westfall Story, a parody of West Side Story. Amidst the carnage of rival gang battling for turf of Westfall, two lovers from very different worlds fight for happiness. It is said that love is blind, but does it also need a translator? And considering that we're dealing with Murlocs, that might not be a bad idea. Now after finishing or surviving the play, we get to move backstage where we find understudies and backup singers, but we also find the cast members of the original plays that performed during the raid version of Karazhan. The wolf, after being persuaded for a bit, is kind enough to do his famous line.
Run away, little girl! Run away!
Brilliant! Yes! To victory!
Amongst the audience, we also find a soul fragment, and then we make our way into the guest chambers. Now, I always wondered why the Maiden of Virtue was inside Karazhan, a random Titan Watcher. It seems so very random. And just before a fight, there are a whole bunch of concubines and spirits that want nothing more than to have a good time. In the new version, it seems like the Maiden is actually making progress. The concubines, they now do their very best to hold back, and they don't want to disappoint the Watcher, whereas in the past, they just wanted to party. That's why the Maiden of Virtue is here in Karazhan, since the Dungeon Journal says, arriving in Karazhan to cleanse the Tower of Vice and Corruption, the Titan Watcher was infuriated by Medivh's infamous parties and debaucheries. As her crusade for virtue seeks converts to her cause, the Maiden remains committed to purging immorality, using all the powers at her disposal. She doesn't like us much either, but despite her best efforts of purifying, we do bring her down.
I will never relent.
A soul fragment is found within the guest chambers, and also a vision that I used earlier as I was talking about Medivh while he was in his coma.
Our friend lies just in here.
It breaks my heart to see him like this.
Another year of slumber. I wonder if Medivh will ever awaken.
Does our old friend dream? Is he trapped in nightmares?
We make our way through the Grand Ballroom into the banquet hall, where we find Agona Spengly and Peter Venkner, references to Dr. Egon Spengler and Dr. Peter Venkman from the movie Ghostbusters.
Oh, gross! I feel funky.
You are a fortunate individual. Of course, I'll need a sample of your brain tissue.
Karazhan is full of ghosts and memories of the past, so a perfect spot to do some work, but we have our own ghost to deal with, and an undead named Morus.
I don't believe the Master is expecting you.
Morus, the steward of Karazhan, dotes upon his master's dinner guest within the Grand Banquet Hall. Eternally devoted to the care of the tower, he dispatches impolite party crashers with cruel efficiency. The nobles of Darkshire that are standing with him, they were the ruling class of Darkshire, who ventured into Deadwind Pass to investigate the blight that had settled over the region. None who entered the Dark Tower ever emerged, according to the WoW website. Morus has left the tower before, like during Warlords of Draenor, where he showed up in our garrison asking for some cleaning materials, and he knows that he gets resurrected time and time again by some unseen force. In life, he was steward to Medivh, who murdered him, and something is just not letting him go. It makes him quite a murderous kind of steward, very aggressive about taking our jackets, which simply won't do, so we put him down.
I will just need a moment.
Another soul fragment wait behind the table, and a vision of Medivh's power vitally coming out, killing his father and putting him into a coma.
Enough of this weakness, boy! Contain your magic!
Too much power! Father, no!
We go through the scullery, where two more Ghostbusters are busy. We clear the stables until we're ready to confront Ottoman the Huntsman.
Well, well, another group of thieves trying to steal my horse.
Once charged with hunting game for his master's feast, Ottoman now sets his sights on very different kind of quarry. Ever wary of those seeking to steal his famed steed Midnight, Ottoman unleashes his well-honed fighting skills against all intruders. His fear is not without reason, since the upgraded Midnight is simply beautiful.
I have become hunted.
Within the servants' quarters, they have a bit of a spider problem, and there is a soul fragment to collect, so we make our way through until the very end, where a portal back to the start awaits. Now we can make our way up the tower towards the Curator, who, since our last encounter, has been assimilated into the Dalek army.
Welcome to the...
Terminate intruders!
The curator safeguards the menagerie from unwelcome guests, terminating trespassers who seek to plunder the secrets of Karazhan. Though assembled by Medivh himself, the Guardian construct has deteriorated over time, becoming prone to energy overloads and erratic behavior.
System failure imminent.
Now you're ready to oversee the tower's protection in my absence.
Defense protocols activated.
I must remember to shut you down from time to time. Overuse might cause you to become erratic.
It's a bit difficult to maintain your constructs when you're killed, which explains why the curator behaves the way that he does. Behind him waits a magical portal, and as we go through, the tower turns upside down, or perhaps we're the ones upside down. Either way, the roof has become the floor, the library is down below, fell beds and demonic forces are on the assault, but we push on through until we find the shade of Medivh.
This is who I am. I was tainted from birth, polluted from before my conception. A bad seed grown to bear bitter fruit.
In the raid version, we faced off against the Shade of Aran, Medivh's father, but now it seems like the Guardian himself, or at least a memory of him, has taken that spot.
Hello, champions. I've been expecting you.
Throughout the fight, he uses Arcane, he uses Frost and Fire to try and deliver a swift end to our adventures, and he also says this.
Burn! Just like that dragon.
This is a reference to Nightbane, a special boss that you could summon in the old raid, and it even came with a special mini-event after you complete the quest. Nightbane, or Arcanagos, the blue dragon as he was before Medivh was done with him, he came to the tower to confront the Guardian. His dabbling in the arcane had gone too far. Medivh had even attracted the attention of powers beyond his understanding. He had to leave Karazhan at once. A dark power was seeking to use him. If he would stay, then dire days would follow, but of course, he did not know what was inside of Medivh, and he found himself greatly outmatched. Medivh cast a spell of great power, weaving his own essence into the magic, burning the blue inside out, and turning him into Nightbane as we see him today. In the Legion version of Karazhan, you can actually fight Nightbane again by basically speedrunning the dungeon and doing the achievement One Night in Karazhan, named after the Hearthstone adventure.
Atiesh will be splintered.
This final line is actually kinda cool. Atiesh is the staff of the Guardian, and it was actually splintered, to which adventurers, they were able to collect the pieces and get this legendary staff for themselves. This questline is no longer available, and since Medan's adventures from the comics have been declared non-canon, it's hard to say how the staff was put back together and how it ended up in Khadgar's possession. Who knows, maybe they'll ever give an explanation, but our adventures in Karazhan are not over yet. We go down the rabbit hole, and we shrink down to teeny tiny little adventurers. We're now in the Guardian study, and it seems like Medivh has some very good taste. Steamy romance novels are prominent amongst his collection, and with a reduced size, we now face a whole new world of threats. There are mice and spiders and floating books that become great adversaries, and even a mana worm, now so much bigger, is quite the boss fight. Rarely does the sight of the mana worm cause a seasoned adventurer concern. These small, simple creatures float about, consuming stray pockets of arcane energy. But in Karazhan, tables are often turned, and what at first glance appears harmless may be revealed as an enormous threat. After bringing the worm down, we do return to normal size, we're able to collect our loot, and we can check out the study for a bit, as well as seeing a new vision. This one shows the moment where Lothar and Khadgar, they just finished putting a stop to the corrupted Guardian, putting a stop to their mentor and friend.
It couldn't have been helped, you know. We tried to alter it, but it was all part of a larger scheme.
I know. All part of a greater cycle. A cycle that now at last may be broken.
Notice how the cinematic uses the current Khadgar model, not the one from the Burning Crusade. Now when they updated this model with Warlords of Draenor, a lot of people were confused as to what was going on with Khadgar. He was a young mage during his time as an apprentice to Medivh, who then sucked the youth out of him during the final confrontation, and after that, he was shown to be a very old man, both in-game and in the comics. With this cinematic, it seems to be confirmed that nothing has really changed with Khadgar. He just looks the way that they always wanted him to look from the moment that Medivh trained his youth. Up ahead are more fellbeds, as well as the chess event, which is now broken and shattered, but the pieces are still magically enchanted and they're on the attack. By destroying the other pieces, we gain a window to attack the king, and upon his defeat, an unexpected ally shows up.
Gul'dan and the Legion must be stopped.
I've left so many fragments of myself throughout this tower.
Medivh?
I will open the way. While you battle that fiend, I will sever the tower's connection to Legion worlds. I suggest we be quick about it.
Medivh opens the door to the final boss. Vizadum the Watcher awaits.
Karazhan's presence radiates through the nether, a beacon drawing in the Legion's light. Our burning crusade has consumed countless worlds. This tower will serve as a conduit to each of them. One battle remains. One final conquest to complete the grand design.
The all-seeing Vizadum was commanded by Kil'jaeden to capture Karazhan and tap into the tendrils of ley energy woven through the tower. Should he succeed in anchoring the structure to the myriad of worlds held by the Legion, the Dark Titan's army will overrun Azeroth and leave little more than a smoldering husk. One final conquest. Does that mean that Azeroth is truly the last planet standing against the Legion? It's not the first time that the demons have mentioned this, but only time will tell. For now, we fight with the All-Seeing, as he commands Legion ships to shoot fell beams at us, bombardments across the field, chaotic shadows. He himself shoots burning blast and tries to disintegrate us. From ship to ship we fly, even more demonic forces show up to assist this already powerful foe, and near the end, Vizadum seems to be ready to play their final card.
Preparations are complete. It is time to begin the end! Behold! The doorway opens to your doom!
It's a race against the clock, but we are able to interrupt the spellwork that would spell doom for this world, and even better, we're able to stop the Legion's second attempt of taking control of the Tower of Karazhan.
But the design was flawless!
The demons have been purged from Karazhan. Thank you, champions. Medivh, you would be a welcome ally in our war against the Legion.
Oh, my path leads elsewhere. Besides, Azeroth has found her guardian in you, young trust.
I have made it clear before. I do not want such power.
You have all the power you will ever need, Khadgar. It is your heart, your courage, that makes you this world's guardian, and a better one than I ever was.
I don't know what to say, Medivh.
Enough sentiment. Hear these words before I depart. It may be simpler to shut a door than to pass through it, but sometimes a step into the unknown is required to break the bonds of fate. There is much that lies ahead for all of us. Farewell.
The bonds of fate. I must consider those words. Until next time, champions.
Some of you asked me if this was the real Medivh or a memory of the tower or whatnot, and I think this is supposed to be the real Medivh, since Khadgar, he does ask for his aid in a war against the Legion. It's never been clear where Medivh went after the events of Warcraft 3, so who knows what he has done with his time or where he's going now. He just showed up for a little bit, and now he flies off into the Great Dark Beyond. Who knows if we'll see him again, and his final words of shutting a door or stepping through it, they're entirely up for interpretation. To me it seems like he's talking about that Legion gateway at the Tomb of Sargeras. We're working on getting the Pillars of Creation to shut this door, to shut this gateway. But instead, to truly stop the Legion, we should step through and take the battle to them and end them once and for all. Like I said, it's entirely up for interpretation. In the case of Return to Karazhan, this is where the story ends for today, and who knows what the future might bring. As always, thank you very much for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!